So that is the question. How much trouble are the Broncos in? Stephen A.
I think they're in a little bit of trouble, simply because I think Kansas City's coming. I think they play the kind of football that makes you take notice with Davis, with Jamal Charles running the football, with their defense playing the way they're capable of playing. Their smash-mouth crew that Andy Reid's got up there in KC, and I don't think they're to be ignored. But I couple that as it pertains to my concern, Skip, with Denver, because Denver's got problems in key areas. Number one, this kid, Chris Harris, is balling for them at corner. He does his job. As a matter of fact, he's looking a little bit better than Aqib Talib right now. Britt had a way with them, along with that kid, Roby. Roby gave up about a 63-yard TD to him, and Aqib Talib gave up something to him as well. Britt had a big game, but it was on Aqib Talib, not Harris. I also look at Denver's special teams. They ain't doing much. I'm looking at their offensive line. They got problems all over the place. They were penalized about 5 times yesterday. They don't seem to be in sync at all. They're not run blocking well. They're not pass protecting with the greatest of ease. When you combine all of that, that's going to interfere and disrupt some of the things that Peyton Manning is trying to do on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Defensively, again, John Fox, I got questions about this man. I really, really do. I understand that the Denver Broncos were in the Super Bowl last year. I get that. But their performance in the Super Bowl was so putrid, so pathetic. And if you look and read the reports the week leading up to the Super Bowl, there were a myriad of errors that people thought that he had made in preparing his team for that Super Bowl encounter. I'm looking at him in defense being his signature. I'm looking at, at the defensive coordinator, Jack Del Rio, and those boys. And I expect more from them. You got DeMarcus Ware in the offseason. You got T.J. Ward in the offseason. You got Aqib Talib in the offseason. You got Von Miller back there. How do you not get pressure on Shaun Hill all day long? You don't blitz. You don't do anything. I watched some of this game yesterday, and I was just incredibly unimpressed with what I was seeing from the Denver Broncos. It's an aberration. You don't expect Denver's offense to be held to 7 points, no question about that. But what really, really alarms me is that if you are tough and in their face, it seems to rattle this team. And that is what concerns me more than anything, because, Skip, when you are elite on a skill level, and you got who I call the 4 horsemen in Denver, in Julius and Demaryius Thomas, and Demaryius had a 7 consecutive 100-yard game, by the way. But you got Julius and Demaryius, you got Wes Welker, you got Emmanuel Sanders. Even though they didn't run the ball yesterday, Monty Ball, and he got hurt and what have you, and you just look at, you only rushed for 28 yards. You look at the weapons that they have. Skip, most teams can't deal with that unless they're allowed to roughhouse you. And if you play roughhouse football, to me, Denver has shown you can rattle them. Yep. And that is a problem that you do not, is a message, rather, that you do not want sent to other teams, no matter what conference they're in, as the playoffs approach. But that's what I'm seeing right now with Denver, and that's what alarms me.
Can we, before I answer this question, at least say one great thing about St. Louis and Jeff Fisher?
Defense. Fisher's doing a hell of a job.
He can just coach. He's always been able to coach defense.
He can coach.
And they're loaded with stars or near stars on defense.
No question.
And
in
that dome, they're just tough to beat. So now they've beaten Seattle, they've beaten San Francisco, they've beaten Denver. They took Dallas to the wire after Dallas was down 21-0 at St. Louis, and they took Philly. Remember that? They took Philly to the wire.
Yes.
That was a close game.
They came back.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So they're no joke, and if you don't play at a high level with healthy personnel, there's a chance you're going to lose the game at St. Louis. And if you take away Emmanuel Sanders after he'd burned them for the deep touchdown that got Denver back in the game, and all of a sudden you take away Monte Ball, and their offensive line in Denver is just a patchwork. It's just they're mix and match. In fact, now I'm thinking they are going to call Richie Incognito, right?
They should.
I mean, maybe they should now. Maybe they should be that desperate.
Skip, I got to admit to you, and it might be unpopular to say, but they really, really need Richie Incognito. And I'm not talking about just a skill. Skip, you almost need the nastiness. You almost need the nastiness. You need that attitude on your offense. When you need somebody that's going to be nasty enough to insist that I'm going to protect Peyton Manning at all costs.
Yep.
I don't want him touched. You really need somebody on your offensive line who's got the kind of, now again, I'm not advocating bullying or anything like that, but you do need the nastiness on the offensive line. You got to have a bunch of Rough Riders up there that says, you want to get to him, you're going to have to get through us, and we're not having it.
I get
and
it.
Richie Incognito is that kind of attitude that you need. As far as I'm concerned, the Denver Broncos should go out there and sign that boy today.
Okay, you know how I feel.
I know.
And I don't disagree with your take on this. He's just a bad guy that I would not want in my locker room, messing with my unity in my locker room. But that's just me.
They don't have unity right now on the offensive line.
Okay, now back to Kerry's question. I don't think Denver's in trouble because I'm not sold on Kansas City like you seem to be. I'm not yet sold. And, you know, I was sold on San Diego in that division before the year, and they have just gotten decimated. They've had as many injuries as anybody, now including the quarterback, Phillip Rivers, who got off to an MVP start. Now he's playing with cracked ribs. He got his knee hurt yesterday. He got beat up by the Raiders. I just don't know if they're going to be healthy enough to make the check. They're only a game back now. They're only a game back.
Not worried about San Diego.
Okay.
I don't believe in it.
Well, in the end, I'm not sure I'm sold on Kansas City, and we'll talk about this game later. But if you look at the numbers of what Seattle did at Kansas City yesterday in that outdoor asylum that they have, that decibel asylum, Seattle outplayed them in every statistical way, except they couldn't convert on 2 4th downs, or we'd be having a different conversation right now. So just for the record.
Yeah, just for the record. But just for the record, they do have the #2 ranked defense. They do have the #1 defense against the pass, and they do get physical. And not only that, they run the football. Now, if they were, you know, they had some big-time pass and attack, and because of that, you know, it's a big deal, then you got me. But the way they play football and the way and what we're saying about Denver in terms of how they can be rattled. It's not so much that Kansas City ultra impresses me. It's that Denver, I think the glitter has just it's dimmed just a little bit.
Well, they're not what they were a year ago.
Well, I'm just talking about in terms of muscle. I'm talking about in terms of being Rough Riders. You've got, especially after losing the Super Bowl the way that they did. You and I both know that the primary reason they lost that Super Bowl is because they were intimidated.
They were scared.
They got intimidated early, and they couldn't overcome that. I think that's what you have to address. You need Rough Riders. If you need to, Peyton Manning and his crew can take care of the finesse part. They need Rough Riders.
Okay. Well, they lost the touchdown leader, Julius Thomas, to ankle. He's had ankle injuries his whole career. So that could be
a big
ongoing loss.
No question.
And Emmanuel Sanders, I love him. We've had him on the show. This is just me. The play that knocked him out, I wouldn't have flagged that play because I don't think the corner was targeting him.
I don't think they deserve to be. I don't think they deserve to get flagged for that play.
It was a hard hit, but it was just your basic football play.
It was legit. It was legal. It shouldn't have been flagged for. But the flip side to it is that defensively, there's another Brandon Marshall in this league. His brother had 15 tackles yesterday. He's on the verge of getting 100 for the season. You got him. You got this guy Chris Harris. If Aqib Talib, T.J. Ward, DeMarcus Ware, and Von Miller are what we all know they are, if they play like that, the way Brandon Marshall and Chris Harris are balling, Denver should have one of the elite defenses in the league. They do not, and I don't know why. But it needs to be asked.
I still think it's going to be good enough to win this division unless San Diego gets healthy and gets healthy fast. But I still see, okay, so I look at Denver's remaining schedule. The Dolphins are tricky if you don't have Emmanuel Sanders.
But I picked Denver to win the division. They're not losing this division.
You don't think so?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Denver's winning
they still have to go to Kansas City and they still have to go to San Diego. Those are two losable games.
They're winning one of them.
Okay, well, those are the only two losable games to me left on this schedule.
Right.
So can they go 11-5, 12-4? Yeah, I think they can. Okay, so when we talk about trouble, how much trouble? Well, the trouble is going to start in the postseason, right?
Well, the trouble, wait a minute. The trouble could start. I said they'd win one of the two. Yeah, they could beat San Diego. But what if they beat San Diego but lost at Kansas City? Kansas City and them have identical records. Now you got a problem. So that's why I said they could be in trouble.
You're anticipating that Kansas City is going to win out? Or
no, I'm just saying. The point is, I'm just talking about
Kansas City has to go to Arizona, right? They have to go to Pittsburgh for what it's worth. But they have to.
Yeah, I understand that.
It's not a cakewalk. Okay, so...
All I'm saying to you is that they could both end up losing another game or two. But if Denver loses at Kansas City, you got a problem.
Okay.
All right. AFC, again, not so predictable. Coming up, let's talk about Stanton and Floyd and the rest.